In this section, I will show you details of Triumph VS Spectrum Analyzer. This screen of Triumph VS shows the spectrum of GPS L1 band. There are 3 rows here. Each row represents 10 MHz of the band for the total of 30 MHz wide. The center of the band is marked with a red triangle. Each point represents energy in 1 kHz band. Energy is derived by the sum of the square of in-phase and the square of quadrature phase values. Each 1 kHz sample is measured in 1 millisecond. The total 30 MHz band has 30,000 of 1 millisecond samples. So it should take 30 seconds to scan one band and 3 minutes to scan the 6 bands of GPS and GLONASS. But we use 10 channels in parallel to scan each band. In other words, each channel scans a 3 MHz segment of the 30 MHz band. So the total scan of one band takes 3 seconds instead of 30 seconds. We also scan 6 bands of 3 GPS plus 3 GLONASS in parallel. So we dedicate 60 channels to scan these 6 bands in 3 seconds instead of in 3 minutes. Triumph VS does this spectrum scanning in parallel with doing its normal tasks of tracking satellites and providing RTK solutions. This is a hint to those who ask why we have 216 channels. We put them to good use. Number 10 on top of this screen means we repeated the scan 10 times, which all took 30 seconds. On the top left of the spectrum screen is the automatic gain control value, or AGC value. This is the amount that we amplify received raw signals to bring them up to a certain level for processing. If band is clean and we don't have interferences, we can amplify signals more. If interferences added to the signal, we have to amplify them less to reach that certain level. Assume that signal level is 2 and we need to amplify it to the level of 12. We have to amplify by a factor of 6, or in our terminology, have AGC value of 6. If there is 1 level of interference added to the 2 level of signal, then we have total level of 3 and we need AGC value of 4 to reach to the level of 12. So by looking at our AGC number, we can see presence of interferences and somewhat estimate their levels. Each AGC value is the average of 3,000 readings. AGC value on the top of this screen is about 2.5 dB lower than the perfect number of 44 dB shown next to it. There are up to 3 dB variations in AGC gain among receivers, and we can ignore numbers lower than 3 dB, or we can calibrate each receiver. Now let's look at the spectrum of this GPS L1 band, and let me explain the little spike in here. In each GNSS receiver, there are a dozen of internal frequencies. In Triumph VS, we have internal frequencies that run the microprocessor, the signal processor, LCD display, touchpad, cameras, UHF, Wi-Fi, LAN, Bluetooth, and many other components. We want to make sure that harmonics of these internal frequencies do not interfere with the GNSS signal. So we test each receiver in a special, totally sealed metallic room called Faraday chamber. This is the spectrum screen of Triumph VS GPS L1 band in our Faraday chamber. This spectrum must be absolutely clean. Here you see a little spike at 1580 megahertz. This is the 79th harmonic of our internal 20 megahertz signal. This is absolutely negligible and has no effect. I just want to show how much we have zoomed into the details of this band spectrum. The spectrum is in frequency domain. I mean, the horizontal axis shows frequency. There is also a tiny blue line which is in time domain and shows the AGC control voltage during the 3-second period that Triumph VS was scanning the L1 band. It is not too visible in this screen. We can see it better in later screens. The behavior of this voltage can also somewhat show if the environment is clean. Here it is clean. This screen shows the GPS L2 band in our Faraday chamber. It is also clean. It shows tiny bump at 40th harmonics of our internal 30.857 megahertz and 51st harmonics of our internal 24 megahertz. They have absolutely no effect in our signal tracking, but it shows again how detailed our spectrum analyzer is. Here AGC is 1.5 dB lower and AGC control line is calm. Next one is GPS L5. It is also clean with a tiny bump. 3.8 dB lower AGC and calm AGC control voltage. Next one is GLONASS L1, which is clean and calm and 3.2 dB lower AGC. Next is GLONASS L2, which is clean and 3 dB lower AGC. Next is GLONASS L3, which is the same as Galileo E5B. There is a little bump and spike here too. These slides show you what we should expect from a perfect environment when there are absolutely no interferences. Keep these screens and spectrum shapes in mind to compare later with the real world. I will show you spectrums taken near our San Jose, California office and a set near our Moscow office. There are also $400 GPS jammers in the market. I will show you their effects too. This screen is GPS L1 spectrum in the roof of our San Jose office. It is almost clean and the CA code component of GPS L1 stands out. It is about 2 megahertz wide, and since there were 14 GPS satellites visible when we took this spectrum, we can see that the L1 energy stands out even in this raw spectrum. AGC number is 0.5 dB lower because this was a different receiver. Next is GPS L2 in our San Jose office, which is also relatively clean. The AGC number shows no loss. Next is GPS L5. There are several interferences in this screen and AGC number is 3 dB lower. Next is GLONASS L1. It is also relatively clean and some little spikes. Next is GLONASS L2. Here spectrum is clean and AGC is 2.2 dB lower. But the blue AGC control voltage had to work hard to keep the voltage level in the zone that we needed. It shows good work of our AGC circuitry. The shape of the activities shows there was something systematic on the air that we could not find its origin. But Triumph VS dealt with it perfectly, as we will see more later. GLONASS L3 and Galileo E5b share the same band. There are some interferences in this band. We can evaluate this band better when there are more satellites transmitting in this band. So far we have 3 items to look at: AGC numbers, spectrum shapes, and the blue AGC control voltage. We can go one step further and also look at the signal strength of satellites after signal processing is done and satellites are tracked. This screen of Triumph VS shows satellite elevation angle and azimuth and the strength of their P and CA signals. Satellite signal strength numbers are color coded. Blue means signal strength matches the best theoretical expectation at the given elevation angle. Green means 3 dB less than perfect, and red means 6 dB less than perfect. Gray means the satellite is below our elevation mask and we don't use it. Gray dashes means satellite is behind an obstruction and we cannot track it. Note that we can track signals to even below 20 dB Hertz. The polar plots of satellites are similarly color-coded, so we can see if a satellite is behind an obstacle or not. So there are so much data to deal with. We summarize all these numbers in Triumph VS summary spectrum analysis screen. Here is the spectrum analysis screen. On the left side we see AGC losses for each band. We do not include GLONASS L3 and Galileo until we have more of such signals. The next column is the RMS of AGC readings in 10 measurements. If RMS is higher than 1, we show them in red. Large RMS in AGC numbers is another good indication that band was not clean, as you saw in GPS L5 and GLONASS L2 in previous screens. In the right side, it shows the summary of satellite signal tracking and deviations from perfect for CA and P in that band. Next to each number, we also show the RMS of 10 measurements, and in the last column, the number of satellites that we tracked. For example, GPS L1 signals were 1.6 dB down, and P1 and P2 were 3.2 dB down, with RMS of 0.1 for CA and 0.2 for P2. Note that GPS P1 and P2 signals are encrypted and we can track them with codeless techniques, which is more susceptible to interferences. There were 9 GPS L1 signals and 9 GPS P1. On GPS L2, there was only 1 satellite with L2C signal. The numbers on the left side are derived from received raw signal characteristics. The numbers on the right side are derived after tracking satellites and observing their data. The next step is what you actually see in the field when you do your RTK work. For example, how long it takes to acquire RTK fixed solutions. Next, I will show you the bands near our Moscow office. This screen shows GPS L1, which is relatively clean with AGC 0.5 dB lower. Next is GPS L2, has interferences and has 6.3 dB lower AGC. On GPS L5 band, there are interferences and 6.1 dB lower AGC. GLONASS L1 is relatively clean with 4.5 dB less AGC. Next is GLONASS L2, which has 7.6 dB less AGC and has some interferences, and has huge activities in the AGC control voltage as shown in the blue color. Satellite screen signal strength numbers reflect the results of what we saw in the previous screens. And in the spectrum analysis screen, the summary reflects the same. As you saw, there are more interferences near our Moscow office than in our California office. The reason is that our office is near Ostankino Tower in Moscow, which has many transmitting systems. All the interferences that we mentioned earlier, they were unintentional jammers or interferences or harmonics. Unfortunately, GPS jammers are surfacing in the market these days. This site has even online order system to buy different types of GPS jammers. They even have a car cigarette lighter version and many other types. We bought their GJ6 jammer for price of $430. They call it all civil GPS jammer because it jams GPS L1, L2 and L5 bands. I'm going to show you the results of this jammer as seen by Triumph VS Spectrum Analyzer. This is GPS L1 band, 30 dB of AGC loss. It completely destroyed the total 20 megahertz of GPS L1 band. This one is the GPS L2 band. It did similar to GPS L2. 27 dB AGC loss and an ugly spectrum. The jammer did the same to GPS L5. 32.5 dB AGC loss and a dirty spectrum. In GLONASS L1 band, it has some damages, but not as bad as GPS. GLONASS L2 also got affected. The satellite screen shows that all GPS satellites were knocked out and GLONASS was badly affected. The spectrum analysis summary screen shows similar results, that GPS was completely knocked out and GLONASS was badly affected, both in the AGC numbers and in satellite signal strength. Note that this was a GPS only jammer. Add an external amplifier to this jammer and it can destroy the GPS coverage in a large city. Next, I show you how to use Triumph VS Spectrum Analyzer feature. In Home screen, click Spectrum. Spectrum Analysis screen appears. Click on Settings. Spectrum Setting page appears. Here you can give Spectrum a name, which will show on the Spectrum screens. In frequency harmonics, you can specify harmonics that you want to be flagged on the screen. For example, you can enter the frequency of FM station near you to see where its harmonics fall within the GNSS bands. How many and how often allows you to schedule taking spectrums. What to record gives you control of which bands you want to monitor. You can also specify where you want the spectrums to be recorded, in SD card or in internal memory. You have much more space in SD card than in internal memory. Click Start to record your spectrum. Then click Spectrum to see the spectrum screens of last recordings, and click Satellites to see satellites signal screen of the last recording. You can view all previous recordings by clicking the View Listen button of the home page and selecting screenshots that you want to view. Now that we know offending spectrums are there, the next question is how to deal with them. We have designed an in-band interference rejection system to defend against offending harmonics. In brief, it is a 64th order adaptive filter. In-band interference rejection is like buying insurance for your car. You hope to never need it, but it's there in case you do. One word of caution. Our in-band interference rejection works only against offending harmonics typical of civilian signals like radio stations and similar narrowband signals. It is not effective against sophisticated military jammers that are designed for military electronic warfare. But note that the interference may be so bad that no one can do anything about it. By looking at the spectrum in Triumph VS, you will know the situation that you are in. You may need to do your survey in another day or do your test somewhere else.